Alright, so hopefully this is working. Because I have not done this on my computer. Ever.
You've never streamed?
Okay. Not on this computer. Okay, it seems like it's working though.
You got the YouTube channel, Robert?
Yes, I do. Okay. Fantastic, it's working. Thank you for getting me my drink.
Hi, something.
Yes. Alright. So, today we are having a random discussion on ethics. We were talking about this stuff, just sitting down in my basement chilling and drinking.
We got generic, not Captain Morgan.
Generic, not Captain Morgan.
Because we're not sponsored.
Off-brand Captain Morgan. That's what we got going for us. All right. So yeah, this is working fine. So hopefully you guys can hear us fine. Hopefully everything's working.
Streaming on the laptop.
Yeah, on my laptop.
Haven't done that before.
No, have not. So we got, into this discussion, so we were thinking, why not stream it? I didn't see any reason why we shouldn't.
Why not?
Yeah, I think
it's stream every discussion that we have on ethics.
It's a lot.
Our channel would have a lot more videos. Holy shit.
No, we have a lot of discussions on ethics. So feel free to, throw in your questions or comments or whatever. So where did we leave off even? Oh, and this may be annoying, I know, but we're also smoking hookah. So
deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it.
Yeah.
That might be a bit loud occasionally. We'll try to keep that to a minimum.
Hopefully not. I mean, could always buy those diffusers.
Good job. Yeah, we could get diffusers. You're right. I don't know why I don't have any. I guess we never stream and...
Yeah. Well, we stream every week.
Yeah, but we never stream while smoking.
No, we don't. We could theoretically be smoking every time we stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, that would probably get really obnoxious, especially for those anti-smoking people.
Yeah, definitely. So, where do we leave off?
We were talking about prayer.
Prayer, yes. About, pray for X and pray for Y, yeah.
Yeah. So, pray for prayers, pray for New York, pray for...
Yeah. All those.
And kind of prayer-focused initiative.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
I think we could just be using the word thoughts, because that's more representative of what they're feeling, because I don't think anyone's actually, going to their bedside and praying for them. Some of them might be, but I think generally now people are using prayer more in the context of just thoughts or condolences.
Right. Well, at the temple that I went to, growing up Jewish, we would have specific prayers, like prayer for the sick. And when the prayer for the sick would occur, the rabbi would then announce to the congregation the people in the community who specifically they were praying for. Or if there were a natural disaster, terrorist attack or something, including that as well to see the healing of the sick. Now, the effectiveness of prayer aside, it serves as a good means of communicating to the community who may or may not need your help at any given moment. Or in the case of prayers on death, who has died recently. Because not everybody reads the obituaries. I mean, I know that you and I don't. Yeah, but if you're going to a church every week, or a temple every week, then it may be useful information for you to know who's sick in your community, who died in your community, and then you may be able to offer condolences towards those who may want those condolences.
Sure, but the only people that would know the person died are the people that are part of the church or the people that are part of the synagogue that were either there while people were, praying for them, or they were, or there was like a bulletin board or something. Recent deaths in our community or something like that.
Right.
I don't know if there's a bulletin board.
No, and well, if you do it in places like Chicago.
Hold on, yes, the stream is kind of laggy because my OBS is shit on this computer. So it is kind of laggy. Hopefully
the audio's not lagging out. If the audio's lagging out, let us know.
Yeah, if the audio is bad, let us know. That's the important part.
Right. But, so, you've got a community of people, and they need to know how harm has come to members of their community in some way. If you were to say that putting it in the obituaries, or on Facebook, or any other means, is the right way to go about it, well, that still only affects a certain number of people, their Facebook friends or whatever. But also, if you're reading the obituaries, that means you're subscribed or buying a newspaper. Religious services generally aren't something that you have to pay for.
Right. Unless you're, part of Scientology.
Right. But, so if you're very poor and you literally don't have it in your budget to buy a newspaper, how else are you going to hear about it? I mean, I'm assuming that you don't have a TV.
Oh, the audio's choppy.
The audio's choppy?
It's no good.
We might not be able to fix that.
Yeah, we might not. Because considering my actual mouse is lagging.
Yeah, your computer is
not that great.
Not that great.
No.
How old is it?
3 or 4 years old.
Wow, they've probably made such great giant advances in technology. That's like ancient technology.
This ancient technology. Yeah, I don't think there's a way for me to fix that. Okay, apparently it's bearable, so that's good. I'll check it out after we're done with the stream. And if I think it's really bad, I'll probably delete the stream. Delete the video. So.
But for the 5 viewers who are viewing right now, you get to hear us in all of our choppy, exciting dialogue. Ooh, so much fun. But yeah, if you can't afford a television and you can't afford a newspaper, I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and there is no other means, realistically, of you hearing what's going on in your community, except for what other people say, then a religious institution might be very important for you. That might be your only means of hearing the news. But also, communicating things to people within a certain community. Let's say you've got a Christian community and a pastor dies. Well, I'm willing to bet that those Christians are going to talk amongst themselves after hearing that news. And it's news that they otherwise might not have heard, and they may be able to more easily communicate over solely because of the fact that they've had religious communion over it.
No, I think it's great that people, because that is kind of the thing missing in the atheist community for the most part, is that people don't want to give up the social aspect of religion, because that is a very important part. So, because we're a social species and blah blah blah. So, I think that getting the information itself is good. And of course, we were discussing this before off stream. Words like prayer, at least for our audience and the people who are like us, the word thought should just be better. So I think in those cases, people should, they should do their own thing.
Mm.
Like if somebody wants to say, my thoughts go out to such and such event or such and such victims of whatever tragedy, they can. And if somebody wants to say prayers, I think the people that, because a lot of people do get worked up over the whole prayer thing, which I see why, because as we were talking about before, prayer literally does nothing.
Right. It has no statistically viable effect.
Not even in the slightest. So, I still think that just saying like your thoughts or your condolences is just better, because that is the emotion that they are conveying. When it comes to religious communities, I can definitely see how prayer is the thing they want to say, because like, for one thing, it's true that the people in those communities are very, they already use the word prayer. No matter how they're using it, they're just already using it. So it makes sense in that setting.
Well, I think if you take certain prayers, a lot of prayers are just things from the Bible which are pulled out.
Yeah.
I use the Psalms as prayers a lot. Like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He guides me behind still waters. Even in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil.
Wow.
Wow. It's very dramatic statements, but I think they're meant to be taken poetically. Right? Because when you make a statement such as, I'm so sorry to hear that your sister has passed, that may in itself bring certain emotional condolences. But there are a lot of people who can't necessarily sit down and gather together their thoughts, especially in a time of extreme emotional turmoil, to state things poetically. And oftentimes, I think a lot of people would rather state things poetically or not state anything at all. Like, if you take funerals as an example, most people won't stand up as the person's being buried and go on and on about a certain topic. They'll try to state something artistically and poetically in such a way that respects the memory of that person. Now, for those people who aren't gifted in language and can't state things in such a way, things like the Psalms or various prayers may serve as a huge emotional, it could be very important to them, because they might not have been able to say things in a certain way, but they found words that are accepted within their community, which say the thing that they're trying to say, and so they express it that way.
Right. You can continue with that, but I definitely have some background noise here. That's the thing I was talking about earlier. But I don't know what the fuck that is, but it makes a lot of noise. But yes, we are super laggy. You can tell them again about the lag.
Yeah, we're super laggy. This is probably the laggiest stream you'll ever see on this channel. And, if the audio's not too bad, then it's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. And again, I've had a few shots. I'm a little tipsy.
Yeah. It's not just us and drinking. Protocols. Yeah, sorry about the lag, guys.
Yeah. But articulation. When you're in a very emotional moment, it is not necessarily easy by any means to express your opinions. And, I mean, even philosophers aren't free from that. I mean, Plato goes on at length about the Greek afterlife while talking about Socrates' death. And I mean, so what you want about Socrates, Plato obviously held a lot of respect for Socrates.
Yeah.
And so it might just be the case that he didn't feel poetically inclined enough to comment on it, so he made comments regarding religious matters to make people feel more comfortable with it. I think John Stuart Mill would defend his utilitarian ideals by claiming that happiness is the goal or the thing which human beings are supposed to have a lot of. Your life is better.
I'll agree with that. Not by utilitarian standards, by Epicurean.
Right. Well, the Epicurean standards aren't necessarily that different from the utilitarian standards. Now, if it is more effective to communicate to people that you are in their prayers, or that they are in your prayers, if it does indeed provide more of an emotional buffer for those people, then isn't it better to state it that way? Because saying that you've had them in your thoughts is just a means of providing emotional comfort to either yourself or to those who have been affected by circumstance acts, right? But the term prayer has more weight behind it. It's like the difference between happy and ecstatic. They still mean the same thing, but one of them is supposed to be more effective than the other.
Right, I see what you're getting at. I think that it ought to not matter. I think in the communities, in the current environment that we're in, it makes sense to, like I was saying before, you can say whatever words you want. You can say thoughts, you can say prayers, you can say condolences, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I do think that it ought to not be, the word ought not be prayer in that case because of the inherently religious connotation that it has.
Right. But we shouldn't make the mistake of saying that something which is inherently religious is inherently bad.
True. But a lot of people do believe that prayer actually does a thing, even though it doesn't. So I think it obviously depends on person to person, their intentions with this. Like, it depends on if they're actually, like, going to their bedside and, praying to their weird sky wizard about it, or if they're just really saying it, condolences.
Well, even if you are really just saying my condolences, for the person who's grieving or injured, and I know that you brought up before that if people know that they're praying for them, it actually decreases their chances of...
That was in the study done. I forget who it was by, but it's talked about in books like The God Delusion. Matt Dillon brings it up in certain debates, and I always forget who it was done by. But they had 4 groups of people, 4 ill patients, not 4 groups of ill patients, and one was told that they were being prayed for, and they were being prayed for. Another one was told they were being prayed for, and they were not being prayed for. Another one was not told they were being prayed for, but they were being prayed for. And the last one was not told they were being prayed for, and they were not being prayed for. So, general blind study.
It covers all of the reasonably possible situations.
Right. So, what they found out was that they were, that the people were who knew that they were being prayed for, whether or not they were being prayed for, came out worse. Their condition worsened. So that's what I was talking about before. So I think it's really interesting. I don't, because I understand the emotional value in telling someone that you're praying for their deceased loved ones or something like that. I get that, but I still think because the word has so much power that it increases expectations to those who think it holds the power that it actually does.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, they get worse. And it's really weird because even considering the placebo effect, you would expect them to be better.
Yeah. Well, there have been certain studies of the placebo effect. I remember reading a good book, Zen and the Martial Arts. And it goes into detail about the healing process. And one of the martial artists covered in the book broke his leg. And while he was sitting there in the hospital, they told him, oh, it's going to take months for your leg to return to the health it had before. You're not going to be able to fight anymore for a long time, at the very least. But he actively took something like that placebo effect into use, where he was like, every day when I would sit down with my leg raised up, broken, I would imagine a little construction crew working on my leg and putting everything back together. And what he found, and I don't know any studies specifically, but I think off the top of my head there were a few studies which confirmed that going through those mental processes actually did contribute to the leg healing faster. Now, it may be the case that when someone's being prayed for, they don't feel the same obligation to go through that same kind of placebo effect, where they say, okay, I'm being prayed for, so I don't have to imagine a construction crew working on my leg. And that may affect their healing over time. But if it is that kind of visualization medium, placebo-based arrangement that leads to a faster course of healing, then I think that prayer holds the same potentiality of doing that if the individual in question also prays for themselves. Now, if it's the case that if a whole bunch of people are praying for someone and they take that as a sign, okay, I'm covered, I don't have to think of these things, I don't have to keep a positive attitude, I don't have to imagine things healing faster than they would, then such a placebo effect may not actually come to be. So it may be harmful for those who choose, after hearing people are praying to me, to not then, in effect, pray for themselves. But I wonder if the study would have had different outcomes if they also included the variable of some praying for themselves within those other categories.
I don't remember that being discussed in there. They might have, they weren't like 24/7 watch or anything.
Right.
Like a fucking rat or something.
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for people who are sick to like,
yeah.
Oh God, please help me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some people did.
But I think it also depends on the beliefs of those people who are involved in that study. Now, if you've got all Christians who are going through that, and they hear that others are praying for them, then perhaps those prayers would have that same placebo effect, because it lines up with their fundamental beliefs about how the world works. But if someone's an atheist and hears that others are praying for them, unfortunately there's a lot of bias against prayer within the atheist community, and that may actually make them feel worse about what they're going through, and in turn might affect their healing time.
Now, and that all depends on the individual that we're talking about. Now, while one person might be like, really the kind of angsty teenager kind of atheist about it, and then there are the other ones that are like, okay, I know you're praying for me, thanks, but it doesn't help. But like, if they have, the knowledge of how placebos work, they can pretty much trick their own body.
Though, I wouldn't
not
say that,
necessarily trick their own body.
right? Because, well,
bad phrasing on my part.
I wonder if it comes down to, well, let's say you're a very well-informed individual, and you know
individual.
Individual, and you know that the placebo effect has its effects on healing, and so you purposely try to make the placebo effect happen. Well, subconsciously or unconsciously, you still know that you're trying to make the placebo effect happen, so it's not going to be a true placebo effect.
Right. And that was when I was talking to Chris about this a few weeks ago. That's kind of the point I brought up. Like, they know that it's the placebo effect, so they can't really get tricked by it. But there are things you can do to, be more positive.
Right. Well, also, when you get into the occult community, Crowley defines magic as change in conformity with will.
Okay.
Now you have a lot of people who are depending on that psychological explanation of magic. The placebo effect, I perform ritual X, and it causes Y to happen because of the psychological effect that it has on me. Now, there's still people within the occult community who claim their magic to be working or efficient, despite the fact that within their own theorization, it's still just the placebo effect. So I wonder if there's some methodology that they use which may lead to a higher level of effectiveness within general placebo situations. I've got to use the restroom.
Okay, you can use the restroom.
We've got some comments.
Yes, I'm gonna go over some of these comments. Let's see what we got. What was Mill's definition of the concept of happiness? I have no idea. I'm actually going to ask that to Rubin when he gets back, because he is actually a philosophy major. Let's see. Is the separation from where the good vibes come from? God equals prayer, thoughts equal other humans. Alright then. Another problem. How would it make a deist feel better if their family called them a priest? Interesting question. So I think it depends on the deist and how much they know about things. So if I don't think a deist would generally be, super happy about their family calling in a priest. But I don't think, and again, individual people have their own ideas. But I think overall, because I've talked to a few deist friends about this, from what I know about them, is that they still take it as thoughts and condolences. So if a priest can, I think that generally deists would be like, thank you for your thoughts and condolences. Let's see. Oh, wow, that flush is loud. Let's see. Last rites might give a patient a feeling of impending doom. To quote him. It might. Yeah, and I think last rites to anyone actually would kind of give off that vibe, because if you're giving your if you're getting something called last rites, you assume those are your last ones. So I think that actually applies. Oh, a patient. Yeah, sorry, that was my bad. You said a patient. I thought you said deist. My bad. Yeah, it would definitely give them the feeling of impending doom, But there are two kinds of people: the people who are like, "Oh shit, I'm fucked," and the people who are like, "No, this is not the fucking end. I will somehow get out of this." And depending on the disease you have, sometimes that can help, and sometimes it can't. Depending on, I mean, as an example of prayer versus thoughts. Oh, I don't know. I think we'd have to just ask deists about that directly because they don't really have a good job. They don't really have, tenets or dogma.
Do they?
I don't think so.
Well,
I mean, just the concept of deism itself.
Well, yeah, the concept of deism, but there's also the concept of theism itself.
Right.
And I think there can be deistic philosophies which still hold the same contingencies as, say, Christianity or Islam.
I see what you're getting at.
I don't know. Deism in general, people treat it as if it's a religion in and of itself. But I see it the same as I see, say, Gnosticism, where Gnosticism is something which
it's a variety of things.
Yeah, it can be applied to Christianity or Islam or Hinduism.
You can keep doing this. I gotta call.
All right, let me catch up on these comments.
Hello?
Let's see. Particular memes in a particular place. Lawrence is over there speaking Russian. Right, a mental diatribe of thought. So they say perception is reality. And I don't think that's entirely inaccurate. When you have a diatribe of thought in any situation, then you still must accept to some degree that you have a belief in that, or that that thing is real. So any thought that you have, I mean, even if you're saying, I'm going to say this Islamic prayer for who's or what's it, then, yeah, that's their actual name.
But damn, who's or what's it got into it again?
But even then, your recognition of that prayer, I mean, you have to hold a certain level of recognition in order to even perform it in the first place. If you absolutely disrespect it and think it's the most ridiculous thing ever, then even under ridiculous circumstances, you're not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to jump up and down on my left foot with my head behind my head, singing Frere Jacques.
Why not?
I don't know. It could very well be a religious ceremony.
I mean, really, it could.
Yeah. But when you do commit that action, you have to admit to yourself that you're taking it seriously to some extent, right?
A Gnostic, that were the original Christians that were denied the inner mystery cult aristocracy. I mean, yeah, kind of. They were really hated out. I mean, the Gnostics, because there were tons of these Christian groups. Good job. You're gonna have to clean that up. You just spilled my fucking rum.
I'm gonna have to clean that up.
Yeah. So
it was not that much.
Yeah. So the thing about the Gnostics is, there were so many Gnostic texts written.
You got a record around here?
You can just take some paper towel. Yeah, there were so many Gnostic texts written. Like, you have the Acts of Thecla, the Acts of Peter, you have the Gospel of Thomas, you have the Gospel of Peter. You have so many of these apocryphal texts that some of them used to be like household names, like the Acts of Thecla used to be a household name, but the proto-orthodoxy was so sexist that they were like, fuck this, we don't want women to be the representatives of our religion.
Of course not, because they bring in all those pagan ideals of the sacred mother.
Yeah, they bring in all that pagan shit. So the proto-orthodoxy fucking hate that kind of stuff, so they got together the stuff they thought was, canon, and that's kind of what we know as canon today. And like they were absolutely hated out by the most popular form of Christianity at the time.
Right.
And we know for a fact that one was changed. Like in Forged Fiction, I go over this specifically. I go over the actual changes to the text of the New Testament. And I haven't even covered the apocryphal text yet, which I think are still just super interesting. The scribes, they changed things to portray their own view, and we still have some of these texts that we know are bullshit because of like the way that they're written. We know that they're not original. There was I think I was telling you about this earlier. There was this one scribe, I forget which text he was copying, but like it was written, 2 or 3 columns in each page. And instead of writing down the first column, then the second, he would go straight across. So he would write the first line of the first column, and the second line of the first column, or the second line, or then the first line of the second column. God damn it! And then the first line of the third column.
That's not the worst idea.
You just go.
I mean, it depends on what writing system you're working with, right?
Yes, but the thing is, since there were entire passages and chunks being left out,
right,
everything was completely nonsensical. I don't know how the scribe was like, this makes sense.
Well, it must make sense because Jesus.
Because Jesus.
No, those forgeries go back even further. There was that one occultist channel that I pointed out to you. I don't remember. Yeah, Indigo Speaker. Shout out to Indigo Speaker. Indigo Speaker's a great guy. But
doing your thing. Address some of these.
All right. Well, I'll talk to Lawrence about Indigo Speaker. Who's Odin? And why didn't Germanic settlers in our country acknowledge the historical references to ancestors who believed in that? Odin was a god from Norse mythology. Actually, Odin goes over to the graves of those who have deceased. Not even the graves. Battlefields, really, of people deceased in battle. And he collects the most worthy warriors. And those warriors go on to train for Ragnarok. They go to the afterlife where they get to eat and drink their fill in the feasting hall of the gods. And then they get to do battle, and eventually they have to defend the world from the ice giants who are coming in and trying to destroy everything. That's who Odin is. He's the one who basically goes around and collects all the souls, gathering up the army.
Yeah, and we have a video on Norse mythology.
Oh yes, we
so
do.
You can check out that video, and I go over one story of Woden finding the runes.
Yeah, Woden.
Yeah,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, Woden finding the runes. That's really popular in the Norse occult community. I mean, even today, you have people who will chant the Galder.
Hold on, I want to say something. This is in fact tobacco, by the way. Just so you guys are aware, it's tobacco.
Yes, it's tobacco. Congratulations, everyone. We have tobacco.
Yeah.
Right. But what I was saying, Indigo Speaker made that video that I showed you a while back about the divine feminine within Judaism, with Yahweh initially having a wife within the same continuity, and that being changed over time. So, I mean, most of these pagan ideals are going to find their place within canon at some point and eventually be revised.
And this is actually something I hit on in our video on Jesus' miracles. One of the main Hellenistic philosophies was that anyone who was given power or authority from God had this expectation that they could control the weather, they could control the environment, and that's something that Jesus did a bunch of times. Not, he stilled the storm, walked on water. That's another thing, but he stilled the storm, and that's a philosophy that was attributed to anyone in power that was seen as divine, because everyone in power was kind of seen as divine at the time. Because the only way you could explain such greatness was through divinity. So, and because of that, things like Jesus stilling the storm, and there's a story of Caesar, how he didn't still the storm, but he beat the storm. Like, there was this horrible storm, and he was like, no, God's on my side, and rushed through. So they got through that. And that was all explained by not the divinity of Caesar, but the authority given to Caesar by God.
Right.
That kind of philosophy. In fact, the last verse of Jesus stilling the storm is, who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Really portrays that's the philosophy that they were getting at.
Right. Well, when it comes to any religious figure, you have various supernatural powers which are ascribed unto them. Changing the weather is one thing which I think is really interesting. And actually, if you were one of the hardcore science is so cool kind of people, then...
I mean, it is pretty cool.
Well, you could say easily, well, we've changed the weather. During the Vietnam War, we flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail by forcing a typhoon season. And that was literally changing the weather. Now, does that mean that the governments of today...
is God?
Well, do they hold the same power as someone like Jesus? Maybe that's the initiative behind a lot of these actions.
I think you would have to talk case by case then, because I don't know enough about the Vietnam War to even start talking about that. But
well, basically, what happened with the Ho Chi Minh Trail was that we figured out a way to make it rain a lot, and we flooded the trail, and it was what they were using as a trade route. So basically, we did the smartest thing possible. We destroyed their means of trade at the moment. But the way that we did it was by manipulating the weather. We literally have weather control machines. I mean, we've had them since the 60s, right? But I wonder if the motivation behind that specific course of action, because there are a lot of ways that you can cut off trade to a nation, but specifically that course of action was supposed to be more of an intense thing, right? So could it be that those who are developing such technologies are inspired specifically by the religious dogma?
It might have been, but like I said, I don't know enough to even start to talk about that. It's possible, but right now I don't believe it was.
We have like the Manhattan Project, where when they tested the nuclear missiles, I forget who it was exactly, but one of the guys who was working on it said a quote from the Upanishads, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds." So when it comes to these government organizations specifically seeking out certain courses of action, might it be that reality is trying to do what fiction did? You know, that
possible. I mean, people try to mimic fiction a lot. Actually, let's see. Vietnam War studies research person myself. Okay, good. As horrible as that war was, I know a lot of vets, and I've heard lots of testimonies. Cool. That's great.
We would love to hear more testimonials about the Vietnam War. Yeah, honestly, it's one of the most interesting parts of our nation's history.
And I kind of wanted to, bring us all back. I think that obviously there is an intrinsic difference in manipulating manipulating the weather the way science does, and manipulating the weather the way a supposed God would. Because the way a supposed God would be just through will, with no other means. But the way science would is like actually physically changing things that are going on.
Right, but it's still a symbolic action, right?
Really?
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 We're getting a
Fucking
smoke
really?
alarm from the tiny bits of code.
Fucking really?
I don't know why you just don't take the battery out of it.
Because it's the actual battery is like tied into the house. So like I take it out and it doesn't matter because it still goes. Like it's still beeping all the time because it's getting the energy from like the lines and from the actual fucking
Open the
from
window a
our
little
own
more.
electricity. So it's
So addressing what this histologist said. So postmodernist ideology. I actually haven't read that many postmodernists.
You know, me neither, but I keep hearing people hate it.
So what I gather about the postmodernist ideology, what you say about nihilism becoming inherent to the loss of the concept of individualism, I think
it depends on what kind of nihilism you're talking about.
Right, but if you take the concept of moral nihilism, right, that's saying that nothing in itself has inherent value, then I don't see how individualism can follow from that.
Well, no, because moral nihilism would not be that things don't have inherent value. It would be that they're not inherently good or bad. Oh, fucking kill me now.
Kill me now.
Kill me fucking now.
But what I mean is, when you make a statement such as X is morally good or morally bad, then you're still put into the situation where if you take the position where nothing is morally good or morally bad, then the concepts such as individualism, nationalism, the concepts of identity, those things which make human beings human, those things fundamentally are still value statements. Right? They're still true-false statements which apply to certain circumstances and which are translated into values. And so I don't see how, if someone is truly morally nihilistic, they would arbitrarily choose, individualism. Well, that's great. Or nationalism, or globalism. That's great. There's no reasoning behind arbitrarily choosing one of those.
Right, but that's moral nihilism, though. If we're going to something like existential nihilism, then we... Yeah, I still don't see how that inherently follows to well, it wouldn't follow to collectivism, but it would follow... What's the exact wording that guy used? I didn't see it.
Individualism, postmodernism. Thoughts on consequentialism? Consequentialism is a bullshit ideology because it depends on knowledge of the future, and when we make any action which may have moral consequences, we can't necessarily know anything about the consequences of that action. We don't know the future. Anything that we say is just speculation.
Right. I think there's some... Obviously, it's not a great philosophy, but I think that there is a little bit of something that we can take away from it. We should act in ways that we think will be better.
Well, if we use the strict consequentialist rules and say that the consequence of any action is the arbiter of the moral significance of that action.
Right. Which, I mean, I fundamentally disagree with that.
Right. But it's an impossible situation. It's an impossible stance to take. Because you have no information about the future. You cannot possibly have information about the future. So any statement that you make about possible future actions is just speculation. you can make reasonable assessments about the probability of the effects of certain actions. But that probability is not necessarily going to come to pass. So the only thing that you could possibly put moral value on is the action in and of itself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on consequentialism.
Yeah, I think... I mean, I'm pretty much same as you on that. What do we got here?
We only have one data set and timeline statements. That's true. And I imagine that all of those alternative timeline versions of myself have moral quandaries of their own. But those are irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. They may be relevant to other versions of myself.
But that's not you.
But that's not me.
Yeah.
I am the me that is the metaphysical operator, which is that which is represented within this current timeline.
Yeah. So I think, because this is actually something, because you guys aren't there for our discussions.
Or behind the scenes
stuff, which I think we should be doing more of. Yeah. So Chris, for example, he has this little funny tactic he uses. He, every single time he's losing an argument, he always says that he's right in some possible world.
Right. I think his statement, more specifically, is
that's what it boils down to.
Right, what it boils down to is it's right in some possible world. But his specific statement is that all possible worlds have already happened and are happening and will happen.
Yeah.
And therefore any action that he makes is something that's already happened or already will happen or is already happening.
Yeah. So in no matter what he's talking about, he just claims he's right.
No, I think the easiest way to solve that dilemma is to say, yes, murders happen.
Yes, they do.
But that does not mean that murders are right. Just because something occurs indefinitely does not mean...
Right, but he's not saying right in the moral context. He's saying right in the true context.
Right. But if everything is right and incorrect in the
right, because he does take the same stance on the morality of it.
Right, because if you take the stance that everything that could happen has happened and hasn't happened, then any moral statement or any statement whatsoever will be both simultaneously true and false. So you can't actually make a logical
statement. Do anything.
No.
Yeah. No. My issue on like when it comes to like moral nihilism, because I myself am an existential nihilist. But when it
Fill you up there.
Thanks, buddy. Don't spill again.
Well, that's a bigger glass.
Oh, great. I think that talking about morality outside of a mind is ridiculous. Because if you remove all minds, there are no moral judgments. There are no value judgments. So
because there's no one to make a judgment.
Exactly. So it doesn't make any sense to talk about morality outside of a moral agent.
But we also say, for example, that the United States has made a moral judgment. Say, if you take slavery, for example, the United States as a nation has made a moral judgment about that. We have said that slavery is not acceptable, and we will not take part in it as a group. Now that, regardless of how many individuals within that group state that slavery is morally wrong, we still must state that the metaphysical object, which is the group, has itself made its own statement.
Well, I think this is where you get into the issue with like individualism and collectivism. Overall, we have generally agreed that slavery is wrong, but I'm still sure that there are people who think slavery is fucking great.
Right.
I'm sure they exist.
But if every moral arbitration were just subjective, then you're left with one of two situations. Either
I'm not taking the stance of moral subjectivity. I think there's... I don't really know the word that I would put on it.
Right.
But I think that there are conclusions conclusions that we can rationally come to about what is morally justifiable and what isn't, just using reasoning. And it's not exactly subjective, because it's not like, oh, it's right because this certain group of people think so. We can talk about it in some greater context, not necessarily objective, where things are always right or wrong in a situation. I think there are, I can't think of a situation where slavery is justifiable.
Well,
but I can't
think about the South. Over 90% of their exports were based off of cotton trade. And the cotton trade was funded primarily through slave labor. And strictly through a financial context, it would make sense to depend on that trade, which does not require paid compensation.
Sure. So when we're talking about, from a standpoint of, profiting or economically or whatever label you want to put on it, when we're talking from that standpoint, sure, it makes sense, but I still don't think that justifies it, because the justification would come from a lot of different factors.
So, what I'm getting from you is that the moral justification of the action has to come from not what is best for society, but what is best for the collective ideals of each individual in that society. Because I think there's a distinction to be made. What's best for society might be X, but what's best for everyone within society might be Y.
Right. This is something that, this is why I need to read more stuff on moral philosophy. This is not something I'm necessarily grounded in. If you give me a situation, I can probably talk about it, but it's nothing I can put a label to, nothing I can describe yet. This is something I've asked people about, too, but they give me weird answers.
Right. It's called meta-ethics.
Meta-ethics?
Yeah.
Okay.
It means above ethics.
Right. Okay.
The overarching branches which connect ethics together and make it a sensible statement. Basically. For anyone who's philosophically inclined. By the way, explain what you mean.
Yeah, well, ethically it's horrible. I completely agree.
Yeah. I'm pretty new in philosophy, but I'll have to just read a little first. But I tend to think that if you base the right or wrong consequences on the brain, it would make sense. So, what I would suggest to you, the little gum nut, is, so when it comes to brain chemistry, each of us is an individual. There are overarching themes within neuroscience which state that when you have experience X, dopamine is released, and dopamine is reuptaked in this percentage of a fashion. Ultimately, what that breaks down to still is subjectivism, because each person has their own individual balance of neurochemicals. There might be someone who is very depressed, who has a deficiency in dopamine and serotonin, and that may affect their worldview in such a way that they're very pessimistic. But there might also be such a person where they actually have an overabundance of dopamine and serotonin, and that has affected the reuptake of dopamine and serotonin within their neurological system, where they will still see the same effect, but it's because of a different chemical explanation. So, if we were to base morality off of the functioning of the brain, it would still break down into a subjective system. And we wouldn't be able to make any objective statements about any form of morality whatsoever, regardless.
I think Sam Harris has a very good talk, a very interesting talk, I don't know if you've seen it, where, you know how everyone's all like, oh, morality isn't a question of science. Which
is bullshit. There's, I forget the author. If you Google value statements in science, there is a very good article on the philosophy of science, which makes a good argument about science being something which exclusively makes value statements.
Right. I think that's kind of what Sam was getting at in the talk. He was talking about how you can make morality a question of science.
Right.
That's what he tried to do in the talk. He doesn't go over that in The Moral Landscape, but I don't know if he's written anything specifically on that. He might have. I assume if he's giving a talk about it, he probably wrote something on it. But I think it's a very interesting talk. So, no, that was my only thought. It's an interesting talk.
Oh, it's an interesting talk. Guys, go watch it. You watch our videos to watch other videos, right?
You watch our videos to click on the suggested ones.
Well, that's all anyone does. I think that in a lot of cases, you take like the YouTube suggested videos bar. If I'm a big fan of TJ Kirk, which, by the way, TJ Kirk, shout out.
Yeah, I mean, I love TJ. TJ's great.
Yeah, you're a really fun guy. Maybe not the most rational at every instance, but still very fun, very practical. And if I were to take a pragmatic stance on ethics, I would say that maybe TJ has a lot of it right.
I really like watching people like Kyle Kalinske. Like, I still disagree with him on some things, obviously. I disagree with everybody on something. But Kyle Kalinske is fucking awesome.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a more different viewpoint, Coughlin has actually recently made videos with libertarian socialist rants.
Okay.
And he makes very straightforward, logical arguments, which may not convince a lot of people, but may convince other people. And I won't say that libertarian socialism is particularly the best way to live our lives, but I do think that his arguments are worth looking out for. I've got to go to the bathroom again.
All right.
Rum's going right through me.
Yeah, I used to have that issue too. All right, let's see. Why not Noam Chomsky? Hey, Noam Chomsky too. I do enjoy Noam Chomsky. He's a really smart guy. Let's see. Claiming the context. If you get the context, then consequentialism could be one of many subcategories that could explain the divergence between narcissism or nihilism or both. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in context, absolutely. How about comedians? Okay, comedians. All right, here we go. George Carlin is like the guy. Bill Hicks is good too. I like Bill Hicks. But George Carlin to me is the guy. I think he's the best comedian because I think he's not only funny, but he keeps it real. Like, he is the guy that's like, everything is fucking bullshit. Like, the United States is, from east to west, a big pile of red, white, and blue all-American bullshit. It was founded by slave owners who wanted to be free. Bullshit. That kind of stuff is amazing. Bill Hicks is really good, but I still think George Carlin was the fucking guy. Like, if George Carlin was running for president, I would fucking vote. I would stuff the ballot boxes.
So you like Noam Chomsky, huh?
How do you like Noam Chomsky?
Well, Noam Chomsky is a regular endorser of anarcho-syndicalism. Anarcho-syndicalism being a state in which there are no current hierarchical power structures, where the concepts of capitalism and socialism are evenly balanced. That is the most basic explanation of anarcho-syndicalism that I can make. I think that comes from your Russian heritage, Lawrence. If you were just a little more American, you would be a libertarian. You would support the free market.
Here's the thing. Fan of Jimmy Dore. I have heard the name plenty of times, but I've never actually watched anything by Jimmy Dore, so I'm not going to make any statements on that. Lewis Black, great guy. Jim Jeffries, really funny. Daniel Tosh is really fucking funny.
Jim Jeffries is fucking hilarious, honestly.
I think like my kind of humor is like definitely Daniel Tosh. Like in my everyday life, yes, Daniel Tosh is just fucking hysterical. Bill Maher, I think that he gets plenty of things right, but I do think that he sometimes is too corporatist.
I think that Bill Maher's viewpoint... So, have you recently watched Religulous?
Not recently, but I remember rewatching it, so I have something. I think he doesn't look into arguments enough.
Yeah, I think all of Bill Maher's viewpoints are very, very much like the very basics. Like, and if you, he does a good job of presenting things in a funny way.
Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah,
definitely.
But there comes a certain point within rhetoric where you can't necessarily express things in a comedic manner. I think Bill Maher, just like George Carlin, I think they both were, George Carlin especially, extremely talented comedians. But there is a limit at which comedy actually can prescribe itself. When we're expressing opinions about the phenomenology of existence, it's very difficult to actually make jokes about that.
Yeah.
And even if you
you can, but...
Yeah, even if you do, like, maybe 2% of the population is going to understand your jokes, and maybe 0.05% of the population is going to understand your jokes and agree with you enough to think that it's humorous.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, like, when it comes to, like, definitely freedom of speech, like, anything should be able to be joked about. I don't think there's anything that's off limits.
Right, no.
Like, I think that...
I grew up in, like, Reformed Judaism, and you grew up in Judaism, and I don't think either of us have an issue with, like, color jokes.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like, the thing is that there's a difference between making fun of, like, for example, when it comes to things like, 9/11 jokes, or fucking...
Yeah, Chris Reagan just made...
Yeah, he did. That
was fucking great.
Yeah. Chris Reagan's a real funny guy. When it comes to jokes, they are intrinsically different from the topic that is being discussed. Like, you have something bad, like 9/11, and you have a joke about 9/11, which isn't 9/11.
Right. Well, the joke in itself is meant to take stress out of it. Right?
Yeah, like, I mean, it's a coping mechanism for me, for sure.
Right.
Like, for anything, really. Like, if I have any hardships, I fucking joke about it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't take away from the seriousness, but it makes it more lighthearted so I can deal with things easier.
I think that comedians are perhaps more than philosophers. Unfortunately, having the philosophy degree that I have, I should have just gone to a bunch of improv classes. But
you would have done better than Chris. Because Chris is all like, I'm amazing at improv. I learned a bunch of improv comedy, and he's not great in improv, and he's not really that funny. He's kind of the butt of all the jokes.
Well, honestly, I haven't seen much of Chris's improv. And I don't think a lot of our viewers have either, because honestly, everything that we do besides Atheist Sunday School is scripted.
This is something else I actually wanted to talk to our viewers about. So we want to make the channel better. We want to actually get the base we have excited about our content.
Yeah, we want you guys to not only enjoy what we're making, we want to be your guys' favorite YouTubers.
Yeah, or like at least one of them. And we want to know what we can do to help with that. We want to know what we can do to, we're not going to, fucking sell out or anything. But from the content that we have, we want to know how to make it better. What makes, do you guys like watching stuff like Atheist Sunday School? Do you guys like streams like this? Do you guys like Mythstery, Forged Fiction, Armchair Philosophy, Secret Lab Reports? Do you like the whole, have big videos that are really hard-hitting? and rare. We want to know what you guys like, because we have a base, but not many people are watching. So I'm thinking we need to get more people excited about the content that we have. So I want to know how we can be able to do that.
Yeah, honestly, we are very appreciative, extremely appreciative of everyone who has helped us
Definitely.
come to this point.
Absolutely. We and I know it's a cliche, but we wouldn't be here without you guys.
Right. But we ought to take more of your suggestions.
Yeah.
Seriously. We do have a website, MilwaukeeAtheists.com. I think it's .com. Yeah, .com.
Yep, .com.
And we have a forum there. And if you guys have more in-depth criticism that you'd like to give us, beyond what you might mention in chat here, we really would be open to hearing about it. We would love to hear more from our fan base. We want to make the best quality product that we possibly can.
Yeah, we really do. Like right now, because people are coming into the stream, yes, this stream is not that great quality. It's laggy. According to an earlier comment, it was choppy audio. That's because we're streaming this from a different computer. It's my computer, and it's not really that great for streaming. It's really only good for editing, and that's about it.
If we could afford like dedicated computers, and I know we've got a few 1080p cameras.
Yeah.
But if we could get maybe 3 or 4 1080p cameras on set looking at us whenever we deliver a line, then we could deliver different, views of looking at ourselves. It would make our videos a lot more interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure everyone who's watching is as much as an intellectual as any of us. But let's be frank, there's some videos which are extremely informative, which are boring as hell to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
We want to make something that you guys enjoy. So, if you guys have any suggestions whatsoever, then throw them our way, and we'll try to incorporate them whenever we can.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is, for example, we were actually talking to Chris about this the other day. Actually, that's why there's no secret lab reports coming out today. It's because Chris was just not feeling motivated because people were watching his stuff. And I told him, hey, that's because how you're making them, it's not really that engaging. It's not really that exciting for people. And
look, science can be entertaining.
Yeah,
Cosmos
absolutely.
was very successful.
Yeah, Cosmos, fucking Vsauce makes amazing videos. They're engaging, they're entertaining. They get to what Michael Stevens gets to what he wants to answer, but he does it in an entertaining way, in an engaging way, something that makes you want to stay longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I mean, we don't really talk the same way.
Right.
There's a certain accepted way of presenting yourself in the media, where it's like, I mean, even just doing an example, it's like, hey everybody, welcome to the show. We're going to be covering topics X and Y, but maybe if topic Z comes into place, then maybe there might be a little issue. Stay tuned for that. That seems to be really popular.
right.
And I don't understand exactly why. It might have to do more with the psychology of individuals than anything else, which is so hard to figure out. I mean, even Freud and Jung were like, what the fuck is going on? There's an interesting story. I've got a book at Chris's place, which you should read, actually, by Carl Jung. It's called Analytic Psychology, Its Theory and Practice. It's a series of lectures that he made. And he said specifically that he would not treat certain people who were suffering from certain conditions because his methodology of treatment was not well suited to them. Now, it's impossible to make everyone happy with what you're doing.
Right.
But we do have a core audience. I know the Pistgeologist.
Pistgeologist, yeah. Shout out to you, man.
You're making a huge donation to us, and we really appreciate it.
We really do.
Yeah, we really do. Honestly, all of us are unemployed losers who have no idea what's going on. But
I mean, I did have a job before this, like a real job, you know, and I wasn't really happy with that. So when that kind of came to a close, because the actual business itself shut down, when that came to a close, I was like, you know what? I want to make money doing what makes me happy. Mm-hmm. And I know it's going to be hard.
Right.
I anticipated it would be hard.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Right.
I want to bring like the knowledge I have gained that I think is seldom talked about to a wider audience. Like that's actually part of the reason I did that pirate series, is because even though I know that not a lot of people are watching it, I think that's a lot of stuff that never gets talked about in videos. Like you can find it in like obscure textbooks. You can find it in those, but people don't want to buy those books. So you know what? You're welcome. I bought all those books. I have 50 books on the history of piracy, and I buy books just about the political or socioeconomic landscape at the time, just so I can get a better idea of what was going on, so I can help explain why things happened. Mm-hmm. That's stuff that's really seldom discussed. And I'm more so doing that series for me because I'm really interested in it. And I think it's great if other people want to see it.
Yeah. But at the same point, we are making a product and we're trying to present it to you. And I understand, being on YouTube, a lot of us are, like, you probably don't donate to most of the Patreons of people who you watch on YouTube.
Right. I used to donate $200 to R and Raw a month when I was actually making a good amount of money, and then I couldn't sustain that, so I had to stop. But I'm still good friends with Arn.
But, you know, we don't take anything as an insult. If you've got 50 cents that you want to contribute a month, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, as opposed to just making content and hoping that someone hooks onto it, we really hope that you guys enjoy what we're putting out. And what we want to do is we want to make something that you guys would want to pay for. You know, when you sit down
like
to
not
watch...
Not necessarily that you have to pay for it, but something that is of the quality of which someone would pay for it.
Yeah, like, if you watch down and watch it... Watch down. Captain Morgan. But if you sit down and you watch a movie, well, you could pirate that movie, or you could get that movie off of CD, DVD, VHS, or whatever that your friend lends to you. But if you really enjoy that content, you're going to buy the official release. You're going to try and support Wes Craven or J.J. Abrams or whoever it is that is making the content which you enjoy to consume.
Yeah, like that's why I bought the Psych series, like the all the seasons, is because I really love Psych. So I want them to do well. So I'm gonna, help them out there.
Yeah, I mean, I could get so much information about learning languages offline. I mean, I personally study Japanese. I think it's really interesting. I think it would be really cool someday to, record transliterations of ancient scrolls from Japan, stuff like that. And when I learn that stuff, I feel as if I've been benefited. Now, I could learn that stuff off of an online Japanese dictionary or whatever, But I look into people who have produced Japanese to English dictionaries. I looked into people who have produced, the Genki textbooks. The Genki textbooks are amazing resources on learning Japanese from an English speaker's point of view. And even if, given all of the resources that I had on Japanese, I could look on any Japanese to English translator dictionary on the internet.
Yeah.
And eventually I would understand the language. But the people who put together those textbooks put together something which I really appreciate. I mean, they do a lot of work, opening up, I don't know if you've ever looked at a foreign language textbook.
I've looked at, I took 2 years of German in high school, so I had to look at those. And I actually like the language, I just haven't practiced it or anything, so I'm not good in it anymore. I used to be actually pretty decent in German. Huh? Not anymore though.
Yeah.
But right now I'm actually more concerned about learning Greek because since I'm interested in New Testament scholarship, I want to be able to read the text in its original language.
Well, if you want to learn ancient Greek, I'm open to studying. Yeah, I'd like to learn some Plato from the original language. That'd be fun. But looking at these textbooks, like the Genki textbooks, I think these are the best language textbooks ever put into print. They present a list of words per section, which reasonably you would pick up over time while you're learning the language. Immediately they introduce to do X, or to read, or to walk from here to here, right? Mm-hmm. But then they include also a CD along with the textbook.
So you actually know how to pronounce it?
So you know how to pronounce it, you know how it sounds in normal conversation. Because when you look at, TV, if you were a native Russian speaker, and you were...
Which I am.
Right, you are. And you were just looking at, say, Psych, for reference on how people talk to each other, you wouldn't necessarily have, a native English speaker's reference.
Right.
But when they include within these textbooks on language these CDs of actual conversations going on between two people, then it gives you a lot to work with. It teaches you a lot about how the language actually works in practical effect, as opposed to just generic, this is how the grammar works, and this is what the dictionary literally lists definitions as. Whereas we could sit down and argue definitions all day, every day, if we wanted to.
Yeah, and then we basically just get down to the dictionary doesn't define words, and that's the end of discussion.
Right. So I think there's a lot of things that can be produced which offer a huge service to people, and I'd like for us to promote more things like that.
Let's see, Old Testament changes a lot from Hebrew to Greek. The Hebrew was more commonly maiden, which became Greek virgin. Yeah, true story. Absolutely true.
On etymology, the little gum nut. So we've, not we. When I first started going to college,
hold on. For Ninit, I don't know how to exactly pronounce your name there, but yeah, we have worked with Arn. Okay, maybe. We have worked with Arn. We actually have a recent interview with Arn about his phylogeny project, and we plan on working with Arn in the future. Because I actually am friends with him. I met him at a Gateway to Reason in 2015, and a lot of people thought I was his son. But at the after party, we got to talking, and we're good friends because of that. He was fairly drunk.
As all good people are.
Yeah. But yeah, we got in touch on Facebook, and we've talked plenty. We talk to each other about everything. If I have a question on biology, He's there to answer that question, or about evolution.
Why don't you talk about some things you and Aaron have talked about
while you go to the bathroom? Wow, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, dude, this is diabetes.
It's the diabetes. I am Aaron Ra's minion for sure. Well, if you're talking about aesthetically, yeah, sure, why not? But I actually came to this look without the need of Aaron. I'm just intrinsically a metalhead, so I just kind of look a lot like him. But yeah, we were at Gateway to Reason, and then after that, I went to Florida for my own job that I had going on. And he was doing a speaking tour, and he also went to Florida, same area. So I went to go see that talk, and then we went to a party. Not really a party, it was more of like a dinner afterwards. So we went to that dinner, and my friend, who was actually my boss, he ate some really bad egg soup, or pea soup, or whatever, I don't know, something bad. He ate that and got really sick, and he was sick for the next 2 weeks. And his whole explanation was, I am never going to a big atheist thing ever again, and this is God's way of smiting me. Obviously, he's joking, but it was amusing. And no, I do not play guitar, but Rubin does.
Yeah.
Rubin is a very good guitar player, actually.
I play the guitar, I play the mandolin, I play the ukulele, I play the piano, I play various electronic instruments.
He made our intro music and our outro music.
Yeah, I made some music for MythCon too.
You did make some music for MythCon.
Yeah, and I've been thinking maybe we could, put it up $1 for the background music that we use. There's actually a few tracks that I'm working on, which maybe we could use as background music for some videos. I know there have been a few people who have complained about the presence of background music at all.
Yeah, that's true.
But I would like to get a little bit of that out there. And for our patrons, if you, the Pisciologist, or who's our other patron?
Chris Douglas.
Chris Douglas, or the Pisciologist, or anyone else who wants to support us on Patreon. If you are interested in the audio files that we're producing, send us a message and we will get them to you.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make that a Patreon thing.
Yeah, and
definitely.
Actually, with all of my music, I'm not overtly capitalistic. If you guys like any of the audio that I create, and you guys want to use it for your own projects or whatever, feel free to do so. I'm not signed with some record deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, I don't know, did you have anything else you want to discuss? Because I think the stream's going pretty well, so...
I don't know, if anyone's got any questions that they want to throw our way, moral questions, metaphysical questions, that'd be a lot of fun to work with. We'll give it a couple minutes for the chat to pick up with.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever.
100%. I look more like a singer.
Okay, so when we were in high school, we were in a band.
So bad.
We were in such a bad band.
It was fucking awful.
Well, Lawrence was the singer.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Shoot me.
Because honestly, Lawrence has always looked like the singer. We were so bad.
We were fucking awful. I was monotone. It was so fucking bad.
I played only pentatonic scales. 1 through 5 chords. Yeah.
Music is another good topic. I like music. We could talk about something related to music.
Yeah. I don't know. I've made a lot of music. I've listened to a lot of music. Honestly, If you want the main people that my musical influence comes from, you should look up Django Reinhardt, Django for Django. He was a guitar player who popularized what's known as gypsy jazz. And other than Django Reinhardt, a big influence on me was the Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz Ensemble. And I believe the Kilimanjaro Dark Jazz Ensemble has a sister group known as the Mount Fuji Doom Jazz Ensemble.
Doom Jazz. I think Chris was showing me that the other day.
Or Doom Jazz Corporation. And they make really interesting atmospheric music, which you might like.
All right, so we got a question on ethics. Is it unethical to make an argument from authority? Well, I think that kind of depends. I think that's not... I don't think they're necessarily related. So it could be the case where an authority is actually ethically right about something. It's still a fallacy if you are referencing someone as an authority who isn't an authority. But I don't think it's intrinsically unethical.
Well, I think that when you make an argument from authority, there are a couple things that can happen.
Like, there are a lot of problems. I'm just not saying ethics is one thing.
All right. Yeah. So let's say that you have this moral paragon who represents all these moral ideals which you think are correct, and that if they make a statement, that generally you believe that their moral statement is correct. So if you use the justification that they made that argument and they are a moral person, therefore that argument is a moral argument, then that is fallacious.
Yes.
It depends on something which is actually called the authority fallacy, which is literally just a logical fallacy which states someone from authority said this, therefore it must be true.
Right. There is another version of it.
But they may have their authority because solely of their moral considerations.
Right.
And in that case, I think that anyone in such a position of authority should be able to make the proper moral argument where you
wouldn't have to appeal to their authority.
Right, you wouldn't have to appeal to their authority.
Yeah.
Rush Maiden Dream Theater, great bands. I actually saw Rush live at Summerfest a little while back.
Did you?
Yeah, they had...
I didn't know they were at Summerfest.
Oh, man, it was so cool. Instead of a pyrotechnics show, they had a steam show. So, like, when the drummer's playing the drums, they had, like, huge bits of steam shoot up in the air. It was honestly amazing.
Yeah,
great show.
My music is... If I really want to narrow it down, it's folk metal. Like, I love bands like Corpaclani and Tyr and Ailstorm, as you can see from my shirt. I'm a big Ailstorm fan.
I'm a big fan of Against Me. They're a folk metal band.
Okay.
They do more anarchist punk songs, but they're folk metal bands.
Yeah,
more or less.
That's where my music kind of goes in. But generally, I really enjoy most kinds of metal. Let's see what we got here.
Evidence is the only real authority. Right. So, if you're an authority figure, you have to gain that authority for a reason. And that reason is going to be based off of evidence.
It should be based off evidence.
Right.
Because we do have Donald Trump.
Right. I think there is a huge difference. And I took a class on pragmatic philosophy. And they made a big deal about this difference. The difference between is and ought.
Right. I think that's a super important distinction. The authority fallacy was simply referring to authority, and that's why it's fallacy. Well, I think it actually depends.
Right, you can have legitimate authority.
Right, so if you're talking about science or something...
Yeah, if you're a scientist and you're talking about science, you probably more know know
Jesus
more
Christ.
about what you're talking about than someone who has never encountered the field before.
Right.
So there is authority which comes with that.
Yes, but I think more specifically, it's like, for example, if I'm referencing someone like Lawrence Krauss, who is an authority in cosmology and theoretical physics, he's not right because he's an authority.
Yeah.
That would be a fallacy.
Right.
But if you're claiming that he is an authority, you can present the credentials and then say, because of these credentials and because of the arguments that he makes, you are justified in believing such and such position.
Right.
And the argument from authority in a context, it's more specific. More specifically, obviously on situations always differ. It's citing an authority as someone. No, it's I gotta phrase this properly. It's citing someone as an authority who is not an authority.
Well, it might not only.
He could. This person. Could,
So let's say that I'm authority. Let's say that I have studied subject X, astrophysics, and I've studied every single paper that's come out about it, and I know everything there is to know about it. Just because I say statement X about astrophysics, having studied all those things doesn't mean it's true. That's where the authority fallacy comes from. The statement is either true or false, regardless of what I think about it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's not true because the authority believes that it's true on its own merits, but you can be justified in believing it if all the authority figures, I think there's some reasoning in saying that you're justified in believing something if the people that actually studied it all believe it.
Well, of course, you're justified in believing that the Earth is flat if all the natural philosophers have decided that the Earth is flat.
Right. I think that that long ago they were justified in believing that the Earth was flat because that's all the available evidence they had.
But the justified truth is independent of the truth in and of itself.
Yeah. Of course. Oh, we got a lot of comments here. Who is an authority and who says? Interesting question.
Who is an authority is determined by those who are in authority. And who are in authority, who determine for the people who are in authority, are determined by those who were previously in authority. So any bias that you have with any authoritative construct, you take academia, for example. You have a bunch of authorities who will publish papers in peer-reviewed journals which say that climate change is man-made. And you also have hundreds of authorities who are PhDs who also publish in peer-reviewed journals who say climate is not a man-made issue. Well, the fact is that what we do produces greenhouse gases, and greenhouse gases affect climate change.
Yeah.
Therefore, independently of any of those authorities, we are still literally affecting climate change.
Yes.
Right. So, it doesnit matter who is an authority as long as the information itself is true or false.
Right, but when it comes to the information, you always have to look at who you're getting it from, too. Like, if you go on fucking InfoWars or something.
Well, Alex Jones knows everything.
Yeah, Alex Jones knows everything. He's the smartest guy.
Yeah.
Turn into putting chemicals in water. Then turn the freaking frogs gay.
The freaking frogs are turning gay. He reminds me of have you ever seen Star Wars prequels?
I saw one of them and I didn't like it, so I didn't watch the rest.
Was it the first one with the frog people?
I don't remember.
All right, there's a frog guy his name is Boss Nass, and he'll literally say, I believe this, and that's like the deciding factor in over whether it's true or not. Right? Let's see.
No.
Fuck.
We got our own little discussion.
Laugh the
in the
ad
comments.
Okay.
No, as in like they're talking with each other. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah, they're talking with each other. Okay. Fake news. What do you think fake news?
What do I think fake news?
What do you think of fake news?
Okay.
For example, it was recently shown that only 20% of MSNBC's reports are factually correct. Only 20%. But that does not mean that the majority of the population are going to say that only 20% are correct. They're probably going to watch the news and assume that whatever the news is saying is correct because they're syndicated. They got tons of billions of dollars coming into them. They must be telling the truth. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tons of millions of dollars coming into them, right?
So my thing is you can publish whatever the fuck you want as long as it's not libel, slander, or a direct threat of violence.
Right. But when you're producing the news and you say, someone was shot on 1st and 2nd today, and the main suspect is Lawrence Yufa. Lawrence Yufa is currently in court.
But then I'm not in court?
Or even if you are in court. Lawrence Yufa is currently in court discussing the matters. The majority's population you is still going to be affected by that. And in fact, the majority of people, because they've never heard of you before,
they're just like, oh man, this is just another guy.
They're probably just going to say that you're the guy who committed crime X, right?
Probably, yeah. So I think it's really interesting because people. I think that if you're going to be a news source, and this is more of an ought than it is. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be a news source, you should cite your sources. And like some people don't care enough about issues to actually check into everything. Like they don't have time for all that. Like I get it. So I think that if something is like a really extraordinary claim, or if something is something, or if something, I can't talk. God damn it. Or if it's something you are very interested in, you should have the capability to look more into it, to see the sources that they cited. And if they didn't cite sources, you should not assume that they're wrong, but you just shouldn't believe them.
Well, let's say I'm very interested in the nature of God and the nature of the origin of the universe. And so I look to those things which I assume to be an authority to me. I look to my religious leaders in my local community. But beyond that, I'd say, okay, maybe my religious leaders are flawed. Maybe I should look to my religious books for that authority. Well, it's really a tricky moral quandary, because anything can be replaced with the object of moral books, right? He doesn't say, oh, I don't believe that. I'm going to ask person X, whose authority I respect. Yeah. And you can't do much more than that,
right?
Unless you've actually experienced something for yourself. And even in the case where you've experienced something for yourself, empiricism is completely ridiculous.
Well, I'll stop you there for a second. Like, even if you personally experience something, like if it's something extraordinary,
you could be hallucinating.
Yeah, you could be hallucinating. We know a bunch of things that the human mind is prone to, and just by probability, those are more probable than a supernatural explanation.
Right, but a natural explanation is also included in that, because you could be under the influence of a hallucination in any given circumstances, not just necessarily supernatural.
Absolutely, you could be. You could be under a hallucination all the time. So that's why we look to others to help build our image of reality or view.
But
And
if those people are themselves part of the illusion, taking the Hindu point of view, for example, that reality is Maya, the illusion, and the purpose of reality is to trick you into believing it so that you will force yourself back into the reincarnation cycle and not experience nirvana. Right? Well, supposing that any bit of information becomes actually convincing to you, that could still be contained in the overarching categorization of things which are trying to convince you that phenomenal reality is real so that you will force yourself into the cycle of nirvana.
I think this is now we're kind of getting to something else, because now you're talking about the difference between the reality we experience and some sort of absolute reality. And I don't think we can ever actually know an absolute, or we can't know an absolute reality when we see it.
But our ability to recognize an absolute reality says nothing about the existence or non-existence of an absolute reality in and of itself.
True.
Right.
Oh, hey, it's my cat.
Oh, look at your cat. It probably speaks Russian.
Oh, no.
Привет. Kokila.
Wow, that was bad. Kakula?
Putin. Well, I guess your cat was just put in its place.
They're still doing their thing, which is good.
Yeah. I've actually got to head up.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. This stream's going on for almost 2 hours.
Well, my friends, na zdrowie.
Hey! You son of a bitch.
Hey, beat you to the punch. Alright. If you guys enjoyed more off-the-cuff talks, then leave a comment, and we'll try to make it more high quality next time that we do it.
Definitely, because this is just we were talking about moral philosophies, and we were talking about a bunch of shit before we started the stream.
Yeah, any conversation is going to break down into a shitload of different topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be interesting to just stream this, because people like streams, and streams are actually better for the YouTube algorithms. So I decided, why the fuck not? You know, let's try it out. Let's see if it works. So if you guys are constant viewers of our content, thank you. And I definitely suggest subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Wow, my cat jumped high up there.
Wow.
Holy shit.
He's a cat.
Yeah.
It's over there.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah, so thank you for joining us so much. And if you are so inclined, we want to keep bringing you guys quality content. We want to make our stuff better.
Anything that you guys want to talk about. If you guys have any suggestions about anything that you'd like to discuss, leave a comment or go on to our website, MilwaukeeAtheist.com, and leave a message on our message boards. You know, we take very seriously what your guys' inputs are, and we would like to make content that caters specifically to the questions that you have that you want answered. And if you have objections to what we've said or the content of our previous videos, we'd like to address that as well.
Definitely. And we have a bunch of series on this channel, and if you have, because every series is a little bit different, so not just the topics, but just the format. So if you have any suggestions on how to improve those series, or if you guys don't like them, fine.
Or if you have prayers for us.
That too, yeah. And the cat's name is Jericho, by the way, after Chris Jericho, the wrestler.
His dog's name is Nietzsche.
Yeah. I had higher hopes for him. That did not go well. He is not a very smart dog.
It's a really dumb dog. It doesn't understand anything about the phenomenology of spirit.
Yeah, he's not that great of a dog. My other dog was way better.
Yeah. Tip, guys, don't buy poodles. It's not worth it.
Or like a poodle, whatever he is mix. Hey, buddy, come here. Come here. There you go.
Ah, there's a good cat.
Come on.
Yep. There you go. Well, until next time, I'm your favorite Bond villain.
Are you now?
Well, I guess you are because
I
you
think,
got the
I think
cat.
he's hungry or something.
Yeah. You might as well feed him some borscht.
Yeah, that is exactly what he eats. No, he does not.
All right. Well, until next time, до свидания.
Now I gotta stop the fucking stream.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Thanks, buddy.